Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the Sublime One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. Kusalasa upasampada sabapapasa akaranam. Kusalasa upasampada sachitta periodapanam etang bodhana sasanam. That means the non-doing of any evil, the performance of what is skillful, the cleansing of one's own mind. This is the teaching of the awakened ones. This very well-known quote from the suttas is the perfect summary for the theme of the talks during this retreat. That theme is punya karyavatu, or the basis for meritorious action. And what are the bases for meritorious action? The Buddha says this: Bhikkhus, there are these three bases for meritorious activity. What three? The basis of meritorious activity consisting in giving, or Dāna. The basis of meritorious activity consisting in virtuous behavior, or Sila. And the basis of meritorious activity consisting in meditative development. So these three bases will be our topics for this retreat. Today I will speak on Dāna. Tomorrow, Sāmaṇera Paññaratana at the end will speak on Sila. And then the next day, Bhante Mangala will speak on Bhavana. So these are called meritorious actions. What does meritorious mean? We'll go to the dictionary. Deserving of praise, reward, esteem. These three things are, without a doubt, deserving of praise, reward, and esteem. All of you here today are deserving of praise, reward, and esteem because you are actually here on this day practicing these three bases. How are you practicing these three bases? You are practicing giving by what you have done to help out at the monastery so far. Whether cooking, cleaning, all of these kinds of activities, that's your giving. You're practicing Sila by training yourselves in those 8 monastic precepts. And you're practicing, obviously, meditative development by doing your meditation. So all of you who are here are deserving of this praise, and it is a very meritorious deed that we're all here together. Right about this time, along the East Coast, everybody's starting to gorge themselves with lots of food, and having the normal Thanksgiving activities. But you guys are here to do this, to, as Bhante Ji said yesterday, to do the best form of gratitude, which is to cleanse your mind and to do good deeds. So, let's move into Dāna. The Buddha says, has a summary of Dāna, a quote from the Ittavutaka that pretty much sums up the importance of this. And he goes as thus: if beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given, nor would the stain of miserliness overcome their minds. Even if it were their last bite, their last mouthful, they would not eat without having shared if there were someone to receive their gift. But because beings do not know, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they eat without having given. The stain of miserliness overcomes their mind. So the word we're talking about is Dāna, and this is translated as giving, offering. It's an inclination of the mind to give without expecting any kind of repayment. You're giving without any expectations. Dāna is the first theme actually in the Buddha's gradual training. When the Buddha trained, people came to the Buddha and he taught various people of various different spiritual development levels. And this training in Dāna and giving and generosity is the basis for that training that leads to Sila, and Bhavana as well. So that's, and also it is the first of the 10 paramis, which is the 10 perfections. Something that's not really talked about a lot in Theravada, but this is 10 perfections are something that one who wants to become a Buddha practices. It's one of the 7 treasures, and as said, it's one of the 3 grounds for meritorious action. So Dāna, giving, can take many forms. When we think of giving, what usually comes to mind most is either a monetary giving to if there's a disaster or something like that, we give, or during Christmas or birthdays we give gifts, these kind of things. That's what we often think about when we think about giving. But there's different types of giving as well. We're talking, another type of giving is a physical giving, putting forth your effort and your time. There's an organization that you feel is worthy that you'd like to put your time towards, doing all kinds of various activities. There's an elderly neighbor you'd like to do their lawn or these kind of things. All of these activities are dāna, they're giving. It's not giving as what we normally think of when we think of giving, but it is giving, putting your effort. And moral living, following the precepts are a gift. The Buddha called the 5 precepts 5 faultless gifts to the world. And the reason why he called them 5 faultless gifts was because when you follow these precepts, when you refrain from harming, refrain from stealing, refrain from sexual misconduct, and all of these precepts, what you are doing is you are telling others, you're showing others that they have nothing to fear from you. They might have to fear the next person or something that's going to happen, or we fear a lot of different things. In this world, but they know this person, he's a good person. I can trust him. I'm not going to have any issues with this person. So that's giving a gift of fearlessness. They have no fear regarding you. And then there's teaching. Us monastics, we don't have monetary gifts to give, but what we do give is teaching. And when I think of teaching and generosity, the first person that comes to my mind is Bhante Ji. Bhante Ji for 30 years has been utterly tireless of giving of himself so that others can learn the Dhamma. Those of us who live here, we see a lot of people come. Many people come they show up and they say, oh, we come to see Bhante Ji, and this normal in other countries that monasteries are open and people just show up at any times. But the interesting thing is that every time, unless Bhante Ji is absolutely sick, no matter who comes, no matter when, he will see them. That is an amazing act of Dāna to me. He is tireless in this. So that's when I think of teaching and giving, I think of Bhante Ji. And of course, the main point of giving is not the size of the gift. It doesn't matter whether the gift is small or the gift is big, or your effort is, of what you're doing is small or large. What matters is the intention and the motivation behind that. Now, the Buddha has a quote where he says, even if you were to have the rinsings of a bowl, if you're by the stream and you're rinsing your bowl and there's little bits of food that come out, if that was to feed, create little animals or little creatures, and you say, may this feed these little creatures, that is a meritorious action. That is giving. That is Dāna. So, why give? We'll talk about the intentions and motivations. Motivation for giving in the Anguttara Nikaya, number 4, 236, the Buddha enumerates 8 motives. So it's various different motives of why people give. The first one is people give with annoyance, or out of a way to offend the recipient, or a way to insult them. So this is a giving that is basically a weapon. It's a weapon of ill will. People give to harm or insult somebody else. And the second one is fear. Fear can also be a motivation. People might be in situations where they, and live in various countries, and they have, threats for their lives and stuff like that. Maybe dictators and things like this. And they feel like maybe if they give gifts and they give and this will protect them and their families. There's also the fear of going to a bad destination after this life and that kind of thing. So people give out of fear. And the third one is people give in return for a favor that was done to oneself in the past. What happens when somebody does a favor for us, gives something to us? We feel like, oh, this is such a good thing that they did. But then we feel like an obligation, don't we? We feel like, oh, they gave this to us, they did this good thing for us, I should do something for them as well. A lot of time, an example that pops into my head is, somebody who you normally maybe don't exchange a Christmas gift for or a birthday gift, and then they give you a gift. And I was like, oh my God, they gave me such this good gift, and I really should do something for them. So that's an example of returning a favor. The fourth one is when you're giving with the hope of getting a similar favor. This is quid pro quo, right? This is where you see like in politics or something like this, somebody gives a donation to a politician's campaign, and they're giving it not because they have a certain ideology or anything like that. It's because they know that once that politician's in office, well then, I gave you this, well why don't you give me that? So that's this giving with a string attached, giving with the intention that you want to get something from it. And then we have the fifth one, is one gives because giving is considered good. With all the other ones that have all these intentions and all these strings attached, this is an amazing one, right? One gives simply because giving is good. That is a very, very rare gift for sure in the world. There's no intention behind it. There's no motivation for gain. It's just, this is a good thing to do. This is something that's rare. This is something that will make me feel good, make the other person feel good. I'm going to give. So giving because simply giving is considered good. And then the sixth one is, I cook, they don't cook. It's essentially talking about I can cook, they can't cook, why don't I help them and give them food? It's like altruistic motives, helping the less fortunate. It's another reason why people give. And then number 7 is some people give alms to gain a good reputation. So as we're going to see in a future sutta quote, one of the things that obviously people love those who are generous. People love those who are good. They get a good reputation. And so people know that. So they will give, say, oh, okay, I'm going to give this because I know that everybody will like me afterwards. Like you'll see somebody gives a gift to an organization or a college or something like that, and then they build a new building and it's named after the person they gave the gift to, that kind of stuff. And then there's giving with the intention to adorn and beautify the mind. This one, I believe, is talking about the fact that when you give, you have these thoughts, these good thoughts that come up in your mind. And having good, positive thoughts in your mind is a lot better than having a mind of negativity. So, and there's 2 suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya, 7.49 and 6.37, that are both called Dāna Sutta, giving. And in these suttas, the Buddha talks about more about intention as to why people give. So, the Buddha is asked, what is the reason why if 2 separate people give the same exact gift, one bears great fruit and benefit, the other one does not bear great fruit and benefit? And the Buddha says simply, this is the reason. There is the case where a person gives a gift seeking his own profit, with a mind attached to the reward, seeking to store up for himself with the thought, I'll enjoy this after death. He gives a gift. So again, he's giving a gift with a string attached, with an expectation for something to come of giving that gift. And so this will not end up bearing great fruit and great reward for this person. But There is the case of a person who gives a gift not seeking his own profit, not with a mind attached to the reward, not seeking to store up for himself, nor with the thought, I'll enjoy this after death. Instead, he gives a gift with the thought, giving is good. There we go again, just the thought, giving is good. No other reason other than that it is a rare thing in the world, a thing the world needs more of. So, giving is good. And then the Buddha talks about 3 factors of someone who is giving. It's talking about the mind states of somebody who is giving just with that intention that giving is good. And which are these 3 factors of the donor? There is the case where the donor, before giving, is glad. You know that you're going to give this gift of your own heart with no strings attached, no bad intentions, and just the thought of that makes you feel good. You're starting to feel good in your mind. While giving, the mind is bright and clear. So while you're giving, there's not all kinds of thoughts in your mind, oh, this person better give me this, or whatever reason why you would have an attachment to, or a string attached to that giving. Instead of thinking about all these things, that this person better do this or better do that, there's nothing. It's just a bright, clear, calm mind. And after giving, one is gratified. You feel like you've done something good. You feel like this is a good deed that I can remember, and that will be a good example for others. So these are the 3 factors. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about giving itself. Giving is the first step on the road to renunciation. And when I talk about renunciation, when we think about renunciation, the first thing we think of is monks, leaving everything behind and putting on a robe, shaving your head. But true renunciation is actually not a physical renunciation. True renunciation is a state of mind. It's a practice of letting go. And you don't have to shave your head and put a robe on to practice letting go. So that's what giving is, that first step. It's the first practices that somebody can do to learn how to change the habitual training, the habitual tendency of our mind to cling and to grasp. And it directly counteracts that clinging and grasping. It directly counteracts our greed and covetousness. So it also, and in doing this, directly counteracting, what we're doing is, instead of holding ourselves in, instead of being that miser, instead of grabbing and clinging and being wary about everything, somebody going to take my stuff, all these kind of things, you're opening up. You're opening your heart. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to cling to. You are open, and you're doing these good deeds for others and for yourself. So again, it's a support for your practice. This practice, there's Westerners have this idea, and I did as well, have this idea that this whole thing of giving Dāna and practicing morality, that's all for cultural Buddhists, or people don't, we don't do that. We're just here for the meditation, these kind of things. But this is actually not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that all of these come together. And the Buddha taught that this is not that, you practice Dāna until, okay, now I can do jhanas, I don't need to practice Dāna anymore. That doesn't happen. Dāna continues. Even the Buddha himself practiced Dāna. The Buddha was an enlightened being. The victory cry of the Arahant talks about how, done is what to be done. There is nothing further for this world. He didn't have to do anything. He did everything that he needed to do. But out of his compassion, he did 40 years of teaching. He brought the Dhamma to the world, and that is giving. So even when you become an awakened being, you're still giving. It's not something that ends once you get to a certain point. So it also gives a reflection in tough times. During times in your meditation where you feel down, where you're feeling very doubtful about yourself and your practice, you can think to yourself, you can think, what, I did these good things. And this brings back those original feelings of feeling glad. of feeling gratified that you did these good things. And even it's the smallest things. I remember one little story where I was very busy. In my former life, I did child protective services, and I was a very busy person. And my last year, I did, a foster parent. I was a foster parent recruiter, and I was running around. I had a big event going on that I was going to talk at, and I was very busy. And when we're very busy, our mind, we're just so focused and so busy that we feel we don't have an instant for anything else. We don't have an instant to help anybody else. We don't have an instant for anything. And I was in the office, and I was running around preparing, and in comes this father with 4 kids, and they're running around and they're crazy, and he's like trying to do his best to handle bringing these 4 kids in. And all I did, simply that I remember, was I took 2 seconds out of my time to press the elevator button for him, so that he didn't have to worry about, he could corral his kids and just walk right into the elevator. It's a simple, silly little thing, but it's something I remember to this day, 2 years later. And then when I think about that, I think, that was a good thing. I conquered my mind's tendency to be greedy, to be attached. Like, I am so busy, I need to do this, I need to do that. But I took those 2 seconds out of my life to counteract that tendency and to give. And so, let's see. Yeah. And really, like I said before, it's a rare gift in the world. It really does make the world a better place. The way you make a world a better place is not by going out and, campaigning and putting up signs. You make the world a better place by making yourself a better person, by practicing the non-doing of evil, by practicing the doing of what is skillful, by cleansing your own mind. That is how you make the world a better place. That is, as Bhante Ji said, how you show your gratitude to those people who have done a lot for you. And it also provides that example for others. So you become that person that you want, to the world to be. That is providing an example that people can follow. So back to another sutta. There is a Siha Sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, where the general comes to the Buddha and says, generosity is good, it's all good, but what are there fruits of generosity that I can see right here in this life? Not if I, am reborn in a heaven or anything like that. What are the good reasons to be generous right now in this life? And the Buddha gives him 5 reasons. One who is a master of giving is dear and charming to people at large. As I was saying before, when you give that gift of fearlessness to people, when you give of yourself, when you open yourself to other people, people love that. People can trust you. People, they're usually dealing with other people and they're yelling and all kinds of negativity, but they know that you are a person who is generous, a person who is giving, a person who is practicing these good deeds. And so people love that. People of integrity admire one who gives. So people who are wise, people who are good people, they admire that they put people up who give as an example for others. And a fine reputation is spread far and wide. There it is. This is a side effect of being a generous person. You develop a good reputation. And of course that you can try to get that reputation through means of doing this without attachments and without strings attached and expectations, or you can try to get that reputation with the motivation giving because I want a good reputation, which is obviously not the best motivation and intention before that. So the person approaches an assembly of people confidently without embarrassment. So this is because you are a good person, because you are a generous person, and people have a good, there's a good reputation. There's nothing to worry about. You're not, when you go around people, you're not thinking, oh, what do they think about me? Do they know I did this? Do they know I did that? All of these kinds of things. Your mind is clear and bright, and you are confident and not embarrassed. And of course, the fifth one is that at death you reappear in a good destination. So now that we've spoken about generosity, about giving, I wanted to speak about greed and covetousness, or lobha. And there's two wonderful quotes where the Buddha talks about what we're dealing with our greed. If there were a mountain made of gold, made entirely of solid gold, not double this would suffice for one. Having known this, fare evenly. And there's another story that Bhante Ji is fond of telling, where if it rained gold, and there's the story has, there's a guy who's, there's either a hole in his roof or he has no roof in his house, and if it rained gold, and his house filled with gold coins, and he had enough gold coins so that not his grandchildren's grandchildren could spend it all. The next day he would look at his house and he would still say, I wish I had a bigger house. So this is greed, this is covetousness, this is what we have in all of us. We have these three roots, actually. We have lobha, dosa, and moha. You might know them as greed, hatred, and delusion. So greed is one of those three roots. These three roots are very important because the Buddha actually uses, as a definition for nibbana, as a definition for awakening, he uses the eradication of these three roots. Nibbana is the eradication of greed, hatred, and delusion. So now we start to see that this practice of giving is actually not very minor to begin with. This is going against one of these three major roots that are keeping us from having our permanent happiness. And it's also part of the second noble truth. The second noble truth is the origin of our unsatisfactoriness, of our dukkha, and that is tanha, thirst, our craving. And this is, greed and hatred are two parts of that. So again, we are going deep to the core of Buddhist doctrine, of Buddhist practice, by practicing this generosity. So, and the Buddha says his practice goes against the stream. And it goes against the stream in more ways than one. Every aspect of his practice goes against this stream. So when we practice generosity, when we practice giving without any strings attached, just because it's good, what we're doing is we are going against natural tendencies for greed and covetousness. We are going not only against eons and eons of our own building up of our greed, but we're also going against our natural selection of human beings. Our ancient ancestors survived because to survive we needed to get all that we could, and those who got everything that they could survived. So we're going against not only karmic tendencies, we're going against tendencies of this body as well. So it's a very, very hard practice, but we can start by doing this. This is our battle. This is our challenge. This is what we can do to go against our habitual tendencies to cling, to grasp, to guard. And those of you who are meditators and are familiar with those mind states and familiar with other mind states that are free of these things, you know that it's a big burden to have a mind that is infested with greed. It's not, but when your mind is clear, you feel like the burden is lifted. You feel light. You feel good. And it's a much better mind state to abide in. So the practice of Dāna is also part of the Noble Eightfold Path. In the right intention, right resolve, right thought, however you want to translate it, there's right resolve are these three thoughts: resolving on goodwill, resolving on renunciation, resolving on harmlessness. So you're going against ill will, greed, and harmfulness. So this is where we can see that our practice of Dāna is going directly against this greed. I like to tell a little story, a personal story, but what I call the croissant simile, another simile to kind of emphasize this greed and what we can do about it. And it's probably about, I was here 3 or 4 months. I've been here a year and 3 months by this point. And I was helping the person, the cook in the kitchen. And I was just at that point still getting used to coming here and eating a vegetarian and beans and rice and all these things, and coming from a layperson who could eat whatever he wanted at any time. And so it takes a lot of getting used to. And I was helping prepare, and then all of a sudden I saw croissants. I was like, oh my God, croissants. So good, so tasty. And from the minute I saw that croissant, my mind started racing. My mind started, the greed and the covetedness started going. And I thought to myself, I have to have one of these croissants. I want one of these croissants. And I started counting, how many monks are here? How many people are here? How many croissants do we have? And it just kept going in my head as I'm preparing. And then I thought to myself, because the reason being is because as somebody who has had a lot of issues with food in my life, an overeater, emotional eater, all of these things, one of the practices I did when I came here, and as a layperson, was I wanted to be the last person online. So this way I could just cut through any issues of worrying about food and all these kind of things. Whatever was there was there. But being this last person online at this point actually went against that, because then that brought my fear up. I'm the last person online. Am I going to get a croissant? I want a croissant. And so we went and we did the puja, and we were waiting, and the monks are going. I'm like, I hope those monks don't eat all those croissants. All these thoughts are going in my head. Those monks better not eat those croissants. And so then I'm in line, we're up there, and I look, and there's 3 people ahead of me, and there's 2 croissants. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to get a croissant. And then there's despair, and it's like, oh, I'm not going to get a croissant. But the 2 people ahead of me did an amazing act of giving. They were a married couple, and what they did was they split that croissant between the 2 of them so I could have one. And I was like, wow, that good act just instantly clicked out of my head. I was like, whoa, why was I being stupid and greedy and all this whole time? And I just was like, that act of goodness lowered it to me, just totally took the greed out of my mind. And I thought to myself, wow, that's an awesome act. Thank you. The funny thing was, I found out that there was more croissants in the oven already. So I was like, I did all of this crazy greed, mind running for no reason. And then, as our cravings and our desires often do, and our expectations, when I went and I sat and I ate the croissant, I was like, oh, this doesn't taste as good as I remember. So that's our expectations, but that's a whole other talk. So this is our greed, this is our covetousness, and this is what we can do to practice. We can practice this Dāna, this giving. And I wanted to give an example of somebody who, for 2,600 years, who has been an exemplar of giving to Buddhists, and that is Anathapindika. Those of you who have started reading the suttas, you might have heard this many, many times, because many suttas begin with it, where it says, "Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jayantha, the monastery of Anathapindika." So it's like, who is this? When I started reading the suttas, who is this Anathapindika? Who are these guys? Somebody who's a fan of history and likes to learn about all these things. That's when I started reading the suttas. Who is this Anathapindika? He has a cool name. I like it. It rolls off the tongue. But anyway, so who was Anathapindika? Well, Anathapindika is actually a given, honorific. It's not his real name. His real name was Sudatta, and Sudatta was the richest man in the town of Savatthi. He was, to give it a modern example, he was the Bill Gates of Buddha's time. He was extremely rich, extremely rich. But the interesting thing is, what does his name mean? His name split into the two words. Pinda means one who gives alms, and anatha is to the helpless. So this is a man who was so giving, so generous with all of his riches to his family, to his friends, to the people of Savatthi, that the people gave him this name of Anathapindika. And that was long before he met the Buddha and became famous for being one of the biggest patrons of the monastics at that time. And indeed, the Buddha did name him the foremost patron of the Sangha, of the community of monks. This Anathapindika's park, it's said in the stories that he spent somewhere around 54 million gold pieces to make this park for the monks. That's a lot of money to spend. And when you think of, you can say, oh, it's easy to give when you have all this money. The guy's super rich. Why? It's very easy. But there's an interesting part of his story where, because of his giving, because he was so generous, because people would ask to borrow money and he would give it to them, and he would never, he wasn't a money lender. He wouldn't go with his book and say, you owe me this. He didn't care. He gave freely of his money. And because of all that, all these different things came together, and he ended up becoming bankrupt. But even when he was bankrupt, he still gave. He still gave no matter what. And that actually, according to the stories, was repaid, and that he ended up getting his, all the money back so that he can continue to be a generous person, a good person to his family. So that's about all I'm going to talk about Anathapindika. But if you'd like to learn more about him, there's a book called The Great Disciples of the Buddha, which is edited by Bhikkhu Bodhi. You can find that either in our library or it's on Amazon, stuff like that. It's a really good book to learn a little bit more about the stories about those around the Buddha. Okay, so I've given you a whirlwind tour of almost everything that the Buddha said in the suttas regarding generosity. And I wanted to talk about some practical applications and real-world examples of what we can do to do this practice of generosity, to go against our habitual tendency to greed. How do we put this practice into practice in the modern world? And the answer really is little by little. The Buddha talks about, it is not that, when he talks about doing good, a pot is filled drop by drop. Drop by drop, you do good, and it builds up. So you start out small, do what you can do, and you go from there. You look for opportunities. Like I found that opportunity even just to open that elevator. It didn't really, the guy, he never knew that I did it. I know he just walked past and, but there was an opportunity was there, and I took it. As simple as that, a really small thing that didn't really have much meaning, but it was a good thing that I always remember. So whenever we have, those of you who are mindful enough to really be able to, in your daily life, to see where your mind is going, the second that you have in your mind those thoughts of greed, those thoughts of attachment, clinging, that's when you can strike. You can mentally let go. And mentally let go actually does work. To tell another story based off of very similar to the croissant story, a couple months later, it was my day off, and again, we're talking about food. And we had a wonderful student group, I believe, a college group came, and they offered Dāna. They brought food for all of us to eat. And it was really, I was looking at it, and I was like, great craving, and it was all coming up, and I was like, oh, this is really good food. I want some of this food. And I don't even know if it was a specific food that I was worried about, but it started happening again. I started clinging and grasping towards this food. And there was, when on your day off here, usually you eat last. So everybody eats, and then you come maybe 10 minutes later, and then you eat. And so I'm sitting there waiting, and I was like, Okay, the residents go, and then 20 people are going to go. Am I going to have enough to get this and this? So I'm, again, thinking about the numbers of people, all the food, all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking about, should I do this? Should I do that? And all of a sudden it just clicked. The croissant came into my mind, and I said, no. That's where I just mentally let it go. I mentally gave it away. I said, what I thought at that moment was, it's better to have an empty stomach than a mind full of greed. And I have, since then, that was an amazing lesson. Since then, that's what I, remind myself. Of course, our stomach, the stomach is always, when it's hungry, it's telling us, you better eat, you're going to die, you're going to waste away, all of these kind of things. We have these feelings, these urges that come up. But, we know by science that you can go 30, 40 days without eating. You're not going to die if you skip one day of food. But your mind and your body will tell you otherwise. So mentally, when you have that mind state arise of that greed, you can let it go. You can not attach to it. You can say, you know what? This mind state, it can go away just as it came. I don't have to identify with it. I don't have to grasp it. I don't have to take it as mine or me or myself. You can let it go. And that's where you can cut it at the root before it moves into outward, like acts of speech, acts of physical acts. And this is you're cultivating a habit. Bad habits are hard to break. Very hard to break. And good habits are hard to create. But this is part of our right effort. Right effort, as part of the Noble Eightfold Path, is abandoning unwholesome mind states. It's whatever unwholesome mind states we have in our mind, we're going to try to work them away. We're going to try to replace them with wholesome mind states, with good, skillful mind states. And making sure that unwholesome, unskillful mind states that are arising, that are coming at us, do not infest us, do not cling on to us and make our mind not such a nice place to live in. So this is our right effort. It's our practice day by day to slowly, like chipping off. Our greed is like a huge iceberg. We can't take a huge sword or a huge thing and destroy the iceberg in one shot. It's just too huge to do that. But what we can do is we can take a little ice pick and day by day just chip a little bit off. Chip, a little bit off. That's our practice. That's how we fill the pot. That is how we become that person that we want to be. The person who is generous, the person who is open, who is not closed off to others. The person who will go out of their way, like a Bhante Ji. No matter how tired you are, no matter how another person's here, or at least that's what I would think. But Bhante Ji, it doesn't matter. He says, 15 minutes, I'll talk to him, no problem. It's like, and I still think to myself, wow, if I become a monk who has an eighth of that amount of generosity, I think I'll be a good monk. Because Bhante Ji is amazing. But anyway, so we can, think about where we can give monetarily. I'm sure most of us have some kind of favorite, favorite organization that we think about. They do good work. We want to support them. So you can, if you don't give on a regular basis, you can practice that. A lot of times, you can even set up a monthly donation. Like when I was a visitor here, when I was a lay person who would come and do retreats, I found through PayPal I could set up, just give them a little bit. And I think I gave Bhavana $10 a month. It doesn't, it's not that big, but it was something that I could give to Bhavana. And so that every month, I did that. So you can do these kind of things with our money. But even more important, what's worth more is our time and our physical effort, our physical labor. We can spend some of our time practicing this generosity in whatever way we see fit, whatever way our mind inclines to, whether it's helping out at a hospital or different organizations, whatever. It doesn't matter in that aspect of what you're doing. What matters most is that you have this intention that giving is good, and that you are practicing to go against our greed. And you're practicing letting go. That is the whole, really the one of the main themes of the Buddha's teaching throughout, from the beginning to the end, is the practicing of letting go. And this is where we start from the beginning. And one of the places where we spend a lot of our time, and I remember spending a lot of my time at, was work. We spend the people that we work with, the places where we work with, the places we work at, we spend a lot of time at. We can think of ways to make our workplaces better places through acts of generosity and giving and kindness. So you can think about that, even if it's just sharing your food, which is another thing. That's the Buddha's advice, right? From the beginning. No matter, even if somebody who knew the benefits of giving, even if there was just one little morsel left, they would not eat it if there was somebody else who they could share it with. So, and so finally I wanted to talk about managing expectations as we're practicing our giving. We're not perfect when we give, and we have expectations when we give. So, I'll give a few examples. For instance, what do we do when we let somebody ahead of us in traffic? Right? We think, well, are they going to wave? They should wave. It's just common courtesy. They should wave. They say, oh, thanks. Thanks. And so then when they don't wave, oh, that punk, I can't believe I did this good thing, and he won't even, recognize that I did this good thing, and he's such an uncultured person. I remember one of the things that always sticks into my mind was letting somebody in one time, and he goes to raise his hand, and I was like, oh, he's a good guy, he's going to wave to me, and then he gave me the middle finger. And I thought to myself, what? All I could do was laugh, because somebody what was in this person's mind that I did this generous thing, and this is what he does. But another example is giving to the homeless. Right? I've spoken with people, hearing stories. I've heard stories, something to the effect of, I went and I gave food to this homeless person, and they threw it away because they wanted money to buy whatever. Another thing is giving to something like the Red Cross. I think a couple of years ago with the Haiti disaster, the thing came up that, every time there's a disaster, we have such compassion in our hearts that we want to do what we can. And for most of us, we're not going to get on a boat and go to wherever. We give our money to reputable organizations that can do that. And so everybody gave to the Red Cross, but because not every cent didn't go exactly to Haiti, people got angry. And now these days you can actually kind of like donate shop when you go on the Red Cross website. You can say, okay, I want to give to that, specific disaster, which is, it's silly, because the Red Cross is a very good organization that's doing good things all across the world. So no matter what, your money is doing good things. And so this is where I wanted to talk about managing expectations. So we have this expectation that we do this good thing, that the person we let in should have gratitude, that we're giving money or we're giving food to this homeless person, they should do this with it, they should do that with it. We're having these expectations of this is what should happen, and then it totally goes against our expectations, and what happens? We get angry, and we think, well, what do they say? No good deed goes unpunished. I'm not going to give anymore. I can't believe that these people would be like this. But the thing to remember is that no matter what happens, no matter if you give something of your own, just because giving is good, if you give something with an open heart to somebody and they throw it on the ground and trample on it, what you did is not diminished. Your gift is not diminished with what the person who you give to does with it. So you should always remember that. This is a way of managing our expectations so that when we do give, that we don't get discouraged from that. No matter what, always remember that. No matter what, I let that guy in, I did a good thing. Even if he wanted to give me the middle finger, it doesn't matter. I did a good thing. And that's something that I can remember, even to this day, something to laugh at. So, I think that's all I have to say about Dāna. So in summation, I wanted to say, practice giving without any expectations. Now, of course, it's in the beginning, just like with our meditation practice, we think, we have these ideals of what we're supposed to live up to. And then we don't live up to those ideals in the beginning, and then we feel discouraged and we stop. Through the practice, you'll see that giving, just because giving is good, will arise the more you practice it. It is an important part of the Buddha's practice. It is a part of the practice that continues throughout your practice. It does not end. It's not a linear progression where you're done with it, you've reached a certain point and I don't have to give anymore. And as I've said a million times, it's a rare gift to the world. Truly giving. There's a famous quote, a famous phrase called Tanstaffel, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And for the most part in the world, that's actually very true. But you can actually do the rare thing and actually give a free lunch, without any expectations, without any string attached. So that's it for the talk. I will be doing the question and answers tonight, and also Sāmaṇera Paññaratana will be doing the question and answers when he does his talk. Bhante Mangala will be doing the question and answers when he does his talk. So one thing I will say is, the first time I heard Bhante Ji talk live in my home state of New Jersey, he said something that struck me and I was amazed at. When he was about to do a question and answer, he said, "You can ask me any question you like, but I can't guarantee you an answer." And I thought to myself, wow, there's this wise old monk, and he's, he who knows what he knows, and he says, I can't guarantee an answer. And so I can't guarantee an answer. You can ask me anything you like related to Dhamma, and I'll answer to the best of my ability and to my knowledge. So thank you very much, friends. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy, and Te Pratapada Pupatu, which means may your practice blossom. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu.